Hi, I'm Makaveli, and I'd still wreck Thorin at Quake, and I'm welcoming you to Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and this one is going to be with a return guest, but with a twist. Normally, if someone's a return guest, I did the interview partway through their career, and they had a whole bunch of years since then when they played, which is not the case. This is actually going to be the literal definition of a reflection, because it's actually someone who's an old school player. I actually did do an interview about 10 years ago with him. At the time, reflected on his career, and there's a little twist to that even, which is oftentimes when people are super old school, they're going to have a really long career, but because back in the day, in the early days of esports, actually playing for a couple of years was a career. There wasn't any like 10-year veterans, there wasn't salaries, etc. So actually, the funny thing we're going to do here, I've got Makaveli, who's obviously a Quake legend and was one of the original duelers and pro gamers, etc. What we're going to do is, if you ever watched the interview from before, that was just him like thinking a bit back on the past. In the time, you've actually had a lot more time to reflect, and you've sort of come up with, since you're going to get to this, you've sort of actually gone back and you've done your own almost like historiography of your career and looked at all the details and the facts and looked up and tried to remember things of like, what did I get paid for this? Did I go to this event? What happened with that? And in doing so, what's kind of cool is you were able to show me this stuff, this archive that you have, where basically you also, one of the coolest things is you were able to essentially, put it this way, the stuff you showed me was almost like what would be grounds for like a documentary. Like if people think about like a documentary about a legendary sports figure, you want to have things like modern day stars be the talking head and be like, oh yeah, I used to look up to, this tennis player when he won Wimbledon, or this guy when he won the Super Bowl. And you kind of did that. You went and actually to some of the more modern Quake legends, people that people might not think have any connection to you, and you kind of got their perspective and you kind of saw yourself through different eyes, right?
Yeah, this is, it was very humbling. These are things I didn't know when you first interviewed me. So first, let me give you credit for digging me up, because nobody else was asking these questions. And then you reconnected me with the scene a little bit, right? And then 04 got in contact with me, and I did the Quake Champions thing, right, the analyst stuff. And that was kind of like me literally reconnecting with the esports scene that I'd cut out of my life, basically. And in doing so, I reconnected with these pros, and I was hearing some things that were very nice and humbling. To be frank, I didn't really get too emotional. I kind of touched on surface level things. I was just more grateful that just anybody remembered me back then. But as I've had more time to reflect, I realized how much of a difficult decision it was for me to quit. I questioned if I had any real impact.
Right.
I thought I was a failure even. And so to come back and then everybody's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, Makaveli, legend. And I'm like,
okay. By the way, that in itself is funny though, that you had this moment of like questioning yourself, because you were known to be a very bombastic player, a very confident person, right?
Well, I think as the document will reveal, and maybe again in the interview, I think this will be more of an introduction to Victor the man,
right?
Which is separate to Makaveli the player.
Sure.
It's a bit of a persona. Yes, it's me, but it's kind of a persona that I created for gaming. So that's that.
By the way, I thought a place we could actually start, a very key point that you made, tying this story together, is people often have made it. Like, obviously, the joke with your career is you had one of the first memes associated with you, which is the idea you threw a chair at someone at the fucking World Cyber Games. And people almost take that along with the fact that you were actually very outspoken about like CPL and stuff. And they almost make it sound like you were almost like that you just were shit at the game, so you quit, or you were blackballed. Whereas famously, if people don't know, you were never paid a salary to play pro gaming. Like, you just happened to be in the right area where you could go to the tournaments, or back then you could win a ticket to a big LAN or a PGL or something. And so you did it for a few years, but actually you're one of the few people of the early people where it wasn't like results either. You chose to walk away. You could have kept going. You could have kept playing, right?
Correct. I think there's a misconception that I decided I'm going to correct historically here, is that, it's Makaveli lost a fatality, he fell off, he quit. No. What actually happened was I had trained like a freaking maniac for Babbage's CPL. I had taken the lessons from my loss to fatality at Razer, which I in my archive, you see, I give him a lot of credit for building upon the preparation infrastructure. Right, he was a generational talent. Let me just put that out there, and one of the hardest working gamers I've ever encountered in my competitive career. But he inspired me to look at my own preparation, because I wasn't exactly like I wasn't a just flash in the pan guy, dude. My results were a part of my method. I wasn't a great freaking gamer god out the gate.
Yes.
Ask anybody. Ask
no, the
Thresh,
joke
ask
is,
Immortal.
mate, that is one thing. This is one thing people maybe don't understand is because you had this bombastic persona you created, like a wrestling persona, they just assume you must have been a natural talent. Whereas the joke is, like, people like Immortal are natural talents. But as you say, when people like Thresh tell me about your background, you were just some kid, he was just Victor, he was just some guy playing on a free-for-all server or whatever, you know, like, you built yourself into a dueler, right?
Right. I worked very hard at it. I got a lot of butt kickings from Immortal, asking Thresh for advice, just really working at it. I never felt like I had like this natural crack aim. Like some kids just have it, you know what I mean? And like some of them just have it. I had to work at my mechanics really hard. And even then I felt like I still didn't have like the best, right? I wasn't like an aim god ever. I had good aim though, but not like the best. And yeah, it was something I worked at, and it was something that I took lessons from Dennis. I took what he told me, like, because I had access to Thresh, so that was a benefit, right? And as a friend, and so when he took me this, I'm like, well, how can I use that what he told me to improve? And so I just kind of created some structure. Make sure you practice every day, work on this. Wake up to your movement drills, work on the map mastery, right? Knowing where all the sounds are, what kind of peaks I can do, what travel time from point A to point B for different routes. I mean, there's so many different things. I mean, I'm sure this sounds standard to pros today, but for, in hindsight now, when I was putting this all together, in 1998, dude, this is extraordinary. This is revolutionary. In fact, I make the joke, I'm probably one of the original super sweats.
Sure. If people don't know, back then, most people just joined the server and played without thinking, or it was actually quite famous in Quake. Even though Quake esports has always been duel, most people played like free-for-alls or in a team deathmatch, and they just played duels on the side. Like, as you're saying, look, you weren't on the fatality aspect because he really was like the first one who had like the whole system in place, but you had some of the first pieces of what would become being a pro, right? Like you say, real practice.
Right. Me and Immortal really developed this together. Extreme Annihilation, I think, is a tournament that really showcased the results, because we really hit it hard before that event. We, as I mentioned in my document, that we separated our screens. We're sitting next to each other, so we had the checks like blocking us. So we didn't want any peripheral vision. We wanted to create that we're in this tournament grind atmosphere. And man, we hit it for so long, so many hours, and the results spoke for themselves. I mean, he crushed Rix in the final on match 1. We prepared on that map rigorously. The whole tournament, I remember guys were telling us like, nobody beats Rix on match 1. That's his map, this and that. And I was like, me and Kurt were like, okay, like we'll see. And granted, he beat me on DM3, which is great. Like the prophecy came true. We practiced. What we told each other was the only person who's going to beat us at this event is each other. And that's exactly what happened. So the results speak for themselves. And I think Kurt knows this too. Like, so you talk to any of these guys, like, I worked my way up. I was horrible. I had a great mouth. Could talk with the best of them. But also like Dennis says in the document too, I quote Thresh, and he says, I was pretty good, but never elite. And I had to make some changes.
It's why, by the way, another thing that unfortunately has mean that you have been sort of ignored or forgotten in history is, I always say this, it was only a few years afterwards that pro gaming was more of a regular thing where people would have a tournament every month, or within a few years people could attend 10 tournaments. So as the joke is, in your whole career, you might have attended like 6 or 7 or something. It wasn't even that many. So one thing people will miss is, if you just compare like trophies, it's obviously going to be nowhere near. But one thing like you're saying here that's interesting to me is, I always think as a fan, and I've watched all the games as well, got a very good memory. I always thought the peak of your career really was when you became the unofficial world champion of Quake 2, where basically this is when Thresh had already retired and people like Immortal were probably off with their girlfriend or whatever at this time. And famously, like if we're talking about the idea of like being a natural talent, that Shub guy, I can tell you, I knew some of his teammates as well after and in other games. He was a mega talent, mate. You played with him at Sarah. He was unbelievably good. But that's a perfect example because I'm sure in terms of raw talent, he's better than you at Quake 2. But if anyone ever watches this final where he wins the European Duel League and what they do is almost like an unofficial world championship title fight, basically. You're the American champion, the famous American, you play him. Bro, you don't beat him by just being purely more skilled than him. You just like calculate and break him down, mate. Like you can even see it looked frustrating to him to play. Like, he hadn't played somebody who played that style, mate.
No, he was intimidating. And I mentioned that in my doc. I mentioned how like I got there. I was still a little bit jet lagged, very jet lagged. But they got me down to the LAN center and like, hey, they want to get me into a game right away. And it's like he's playing Instagib. They had me in there. Dude, I got trounced, man. It must have been like a good 3 frags to 1 on average. He's just punishing me with railgun only, and I'm thinking, wow, like this guy's good. This isn't like he's not a scrub. This isn't going to be easy, and like so it was definitely intimidating, and I had to kind of keep the persona up as a bit of a mask, a bit of a shield.
Right.
Act like
okay.
Act like it didn't bother me. I was worried. I shook it off. I'm just tired. Blah blah blah. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, this guy's really good. Jet lag, no jet lag. There's some things you just can't fake, right? Like his movement, he was just so crisp. Like everything was good, and yeah, it literally shook me a little bit, not gonna lie. So, but
in the games though, you beat him like a chess master, mate. You just control him. It's mega.
Yeah, I slow played him. I slow played him. I did, and I also didn't scrim against him at all. I played everybody else there in warm up games except for Shub.
Ah, right. It's not a psychological angle, right?
It was deliberate. I didn't want him to see anything. I didn't want him to feel anything. Yeah, I just wanted him to try to have to learn me on the fly. Because I like they told me everybody's saying like he's the favorite to win. So I had a good inkling that I would be playing him. And then I just used the other guys to kind of build my confidence, which I did. I was beating everybody in the practice area pretty good. I had that one game to blue everybody likes to highlight, which I want to point out. I'm going to correct something really quick here. Yeah, I took him lightly. I let him run up the score because the game was over. All right, that's Quake 2 for people to know. So I beat him back on DM3 convincingly. I asked him for a rematch on DM1. He refused. And now it's easy for people to come back and be like, oh, Makaveli's just saying that now. But as you know in that document, I don't make any claim without receipts.
Okay.
And so I'm going to make another claim here with receipts. If you go to YouTube, you can find the Blue versus Makaveli demo on DM3. At the very end of the demo, you can see it in chat.
Oh,
rematch on DM1, question mark. There it is in the record. I asked him, and there is no third game. So what does that tell you?
Okay.
He knew. I told him I took him light. I was going to come back and play him very serious the next game. He didn't give me.
No, by the way,
opportunity.
that's it. Look, I wouldn't be rude and say it was a setup, but as you say, everyone wanted you to lose. Everyone wanted the Europeans to win because it was a European event, and like that's even like you're saying. Not only did they bring you there, throw you in an Instagib with Shub, who you're going to play eventually, but then they're like, "Hey, we've got some warm-up games for you." If no one knows, the blue guy was a nobody at the time. It turns out he's like a mega natural talent too. And then famously, everyone just remembers this one demo where he tools you because you're thinking like, if I'm just playing some random Swedish guy, you don't expect him to be that good. Like he had fucking skills, didn't he? Feels like a setup, if you know what I mean, though.
He caught me with my pants down 100%. Right. Like he was a talented guy, and actually it's kind of funny career trajectory now that you brought up Blue, because he also got a bag.
He got screwed, mate. That's why he went to CS.
And he just said, "The hell with this."
Yeah, even though he was a mega player, yeah, he could have played for years.
Fantastic talent. Blue was fantastic talent, dude. 100%. Yeah, and it's just unfortunate. Like I said, things got documented, and it's partially my fault. I just kind of accepted. That's just people are going to say what they want to say, And maybe at the time people wouldn't have received what I had to say as like now, because time is perspective, and I have some peer validation and things. I'm not making any claims in the document. I think as I've discussed with you, I tried to follow Walter Payton's sage advice. And for those of you who don't know what it is, basically the quote is this, is that when you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. When you're great at something, they'll tell you. So in the document, I talk about my history and all this. I never make any proclamations. I just say what happened, and I allow other people to speak.
Well, one thing actually I immediately want to ask you about is this is another funny thing. If anyone goes and watches that Reflections interview about 10 years ago, I actually present to you what was at the time actually like a theory of mine, because I knew Rafa because me and him were working in SK Gaming for the period when he became a great duel player. And I used to go to the events with him and we used to talk about all the old stuff. And I knew we used to watch old demos and things. And so famously, I was the one who introduced to you this idea that you didn't actually know, which is that you, through Thresh, through Rafa, 04, was an actual real lineage. That's almost like in like chess when people mentor each other and kind of pass down their philosophy. That's real. I know this is something you've thought about since though, right? And you've asked these guys and you've essentially confirmed it, right?
Yes. Let me just start simply with yes. And it's extremely humbling. Again, just like in my first...
You weren't aware of this at all, right?
No, not really. I mean, I knew 04 learned from me. We're in the same scene. That's just natural. But when he told me specifically that he used to just sit on servers and watch me play for hours, that meant a lot. That meant a lot to me, on a personal connection level. That people felt. And I wanted to pass on knowledge. One of the things, he's my friend. One of the things I differed from Dennis or Thresh with my approach was I was much more public.
Right.
I was much more approachable. More public.
He wanted the mystique, right? He had a bit of that going on.
Yeah, he's more private and more enigmatic, right?
Yes.
Like you can't. Yeah, and I was just out there. Like, hey, I'm playing with my name. You want to record me? I got demos all over the place. If you ask me questions, I'm approachable. I'm not going to gatekeep. I'm going to tell you, what I'm thinking, strategy-wise, how I'm prepping, all of that. And to find out that was appreciated many years later was very, like I said, it's just very humbling and it's a little emotional because you don't think you had a real impact. It was very difficult walking away from esports because I was still good.
Yeah.
I was still good. And the Babbage's thing was a total mess up. And then I just realized there was nothing for me in this space. Even if successful, it could have destroyed my future. And so I had to walk away. And then you got to deal with the bull crap. People talking their yang, don't know shit online, frankly. And they don't know fucking the first thing about what it would take to compete at a world-class level.
Sure.
I let it go. It was a conscious decision. My retirement date, for anybody who really wants to know, it's January 2001. That's when the grind stopped. That's when the discipline stopped. Just playing fucking randoms on Pro T4 on a server and kicking their asses and fucking training. Okay? Not at this level.
Right.
Now you're talking about Fatality and 04 and CZM and all these other fucking guys I had to play.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it was serious fucking competition and preparation.
And by the way, I can corroborate, at the time you're talking about, around that like World Cyber Games qualifier, bro, that was one of the best like NA tournaments ever, where it was you, Socrates, 04, you guys were fucking going back and forth. Those are some awesome games. You were still a very good player then. You could have been a contender.
And I think people need to have some context there. I didn't compete all year.
Right.
So when people at my last tournament,
you just showed up, right?
Was about 2 weeks of practice,
right?
Yeah, and I don't mean to say that like, no, so great. No, it was just how it was.
No, but it's like you said, you were a guy who needed to practice. You were someone who you were the grinder, right?
Yeah, and I knew I'd lost a step. I could feel it. Like I was not. Yeah, I was still. Of course, I was still good. I was world class just a year ago. You know what I mean? It doesn't just disappear overnight. But yeah, it clearly lost a step. And like I said, mentally, I was done. That's the big thing. If anybody ever asks me, people have asked me, what does it take to go pro? And one of my first answers is generally passion. Um, you're just chasing money and fame. I'm sorry, that's not a. You need to be truly passionate about the craft, about the competition, because otherwise you're just not going to rise that high, in my opinion. So the passion was gone. I was very disillusioned after everything that happened at Babbage's. I mean, I basically got fucking rug pulled. I was a national fucking media guy, all this shit. I got no fucking help from the CPL, from Angel. Granted, he had his own fucking problems to deal with. I don't want to throw Angel under the bus here. I didn't throw him under the bus in the document.
Yeah.
Do I have reasons to feel bitter, like, about what happened? Sure. Do I choose to be? No. I'd rather look back at it with some grace and recognize that it was a nascent scene.
Yes.
Like, there was just some things that were out of control at the time.
Yes.
And I was just too forward thinking. I was living in the now in 2000. And that was probably frustrating as hell for Angel Munoz, frankly, honestly. Here's some fucking 21-year-old kid running his damn mouth. I had no business sense. I knew fucking nothing about any of it. Like what it took to get the sponsors in the door, what he was dealing with behind closed doors financially. Didn't even care to ask. Like, and not to mention, I don't think, in fairness, looking back, I can't think of a time where I ever really sat down with Angel and had a heart to heart.
Oh, right.
These are my fears and concerns. Yeah, you want me to be your media guy and help. That's fine. But here are my concerns. These are my fears. These are things I need right now to survive, right? And I don't think I ever really had that frank conversation, which was a sign of, it's just an immature kid, and I just didn't know what I was doing. To be fair. I was trying to make the dream happen. It was pure passion. Some guys just showed up, they took their winnings. It was an opportunity, this and that. I like to think of myself, I was more than that. I was always pushing the dream. I was pushing that this can be professional. Even like my interviews and everything, I make sure I was clean cut, presentable, tried to speak well, talk about the scene, not myself. And I just tried to keep that, and it just wasn't ready for me. It just wasn't ready for somebody like me.
What I'll do is I'll tell a little anecdote. Maybe you know some of this anecdote, and it'll actually give a good contrast about setting the scene for what esports was like back then. So first of all, back then, I can tell you, as somebody who used to be on all these forums, you are right. That is the way people would always frame it. They'd always frame it as if you were a top player and you stopped playing Quake, it's because you're scared of the top guy. You're scared of Zero Force. And the joke is, in the same way they did this to you with Fatality, the story I'm going to tell is about Fatality. They did this with Fatality. When 0-4 overtook Fatality, and everyone knew Fatality's grinding all the time and he's a pro and he wants to be the best player. Famously, because at the time, all the money left from Quake. The CPL was switching to Counter-Strike. There was all these other things going on. There wasn't as many Quake tournaments in general. And what happened was 0-4 was more of just a Quake player. Fatality was trying to be a professional gamer. So what he did famously was he played Counter-Strike, and then I remember famously he played that Alien versus Predator tournament where he won the $40,000 car or whatever. And when he did that, he did this comeback, and famously he came back at QuakeCon and he actually beat 0-4 on DM6, like 0-4's map, and this was like an epic moment. And the joke was, before that, everyone was mocking Fatality. Guy, you only left Alien vs Predator because you were scared of 0-4. And I always used to tell people, like, what I had to look back on there and realise is, no, since his goal was to be a professional, he had to go where the money was, where the opportunity was. And bro, that kind of tells you something about where Quake was. If even Fatality, who's the worldwide star, if even he has to sort of go elsewhere for a while, it's not a proper pro scene yet. It's not something like a sport where you play year-round and you got a big contract. He had to temporarily dip in and out of Quake himself to be a pro.
I do not... Look, Jonathan Wendell, Fatality, my friend and peer, deserves a lot of credit for his courage, his determination, everything he did for esports. I frankly, since I know we're talking about me here, but let me just toot my friend's horn a little bit. I don't think he gets enough credit and recognition in modern esports. Like, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for everything he did. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The money wasn't there. We've talked, we're friends. We talked about it. He had to do what he had to do, man. He had to go out there. He had to push. He had to sell himself. I do not envy what he had to go through. Everybody likes to look at the results.
Yep.
Oh, Fatality, the brand. He was just so successful. Dude, that was a grind. He had struggles. He had fears. He had to wait, worry about the next deal coming through. I guarantee you, anybody who had a heart-to-heart with him and really discussed that would realize what a struggle it was. I mean, it looks great on the outside, but it's not all roses and unicorns and rainbows. It was a grind for him, and that's why he swapped 100%. And I think it's unfair for people to criticize him for that, because
No, I agree.
he was like me, and this is I hate to say it, it's kind of funny. I people are like, do you have any, looking back at like Fatality, I can't dislike the man. I can't hate him.
He's inspirational, isn't he?
And the reason why, and I'll get a little personal with this, because we were the same once. We were the same person, basically. The only difference is we our paths diverged. He kept going into the grind. I basically said, F this, dude. Like, it's not worth it, right? And I went. At that point, at an inflection point in esports, we were the same. We were driven, passionate about the scene. We believed in professional gaming as a career, as a future, and I don't think people give him enough credit for pushing through, truly. So that's just my opinion on
No,
Fatality.
absolutely. By the way, I'll also say as well, he's another person where it shows how that certain people they just won't like you for whatever reason, mate. The joke was, when he would even switch to other games, everyone preyed on his downfall. They all wanted him to lose an Unreal tournament. They all wanted him to be exposed as, some like one game Andy or something. Actually, I agree with you. Even if at the time I didn't get what he was doing, the more I look back now, like, first of all, for me in esports, he's like a Mount Rushmore figure, mate. Like, this guy was fucking inspirational. Like, he was a visionary, like you say, yeah.
Yeah, and I think modern audiences or younger players, I want to put it into context too. There was a stigma back then.
Yes.
It wasn't cool. It wasn't like you were just fucking nuts. Like, nobody will ever pay money to watch somebody play video games.
Yes.
I heard that ad nauseum. My own parents told me this. Like it's not. You were a nerd, a basement dweller, you're wasting your life, a loser, whatever. Like, these are the stigmas that carried with that at that time. Even just being good at a game, you were called a no-lifer. Like, just, yeah. So I think people need to put in perspective, like, what kind of emotional strength it took to push through a lot of this, and the belief it took, I'm looking back at people like, what did you play for? I didn't play for money. There wasn't any. I didn't play for fame. All I got was fucking ridicule and people telling me I was wasting my time. Like, I was playing for the dream, and that's why I'm finally, I guess, breaking my silence. Like, I've known, and that's something I feel like I'd like to touch on, that it's hard to know you've had an impact, right? You've walked with giants, basically. Like, I rub elbows with Thresh, Fatality, and the rest, right? And nobody remembers your name, and nobody remembers what you did.
Well, along these lines, that's the perfect segue. Because just like I told you the story where 04 had the impact and then Rafa learned from him, etc., and these guys all knew about you, etc., one of the things that you didn't realize yourself until you began this process of going out there and doing the fact-finding and talking to people and get their testimony is, I give you the analogy. It's like in sports. You get now, when they make a documentary about a great sports figure, why they get so emotional when, like, a modern-day pro acknowledges them and says, I used to look up to you, or, this aspect of your game, I wanted to do that like you did. Like, again, it might not sound like much to a fan, but having impact matters, right? It shows that even after you played, people thought about you, things you did echoed on.
Yeah, I'll tell a personal story that I wouldn't have known until I came back for the analyst thing. I was DreamHack Winter. I believe this would be 2018, 2019, one of the Quake I believe it might have been 18. I'm there at an after event, hanging out with the guys. And, Cypher's there, just hanging out, and totally unprompted. He just tells me, he's like, basically just tells me, by the way, I used to look up to you as a kid. My brother used to download your demos, burn them CD, and bring them back to the house so we could watch them. He's like, I grew up watching you play. You inspired me, yada, yada. I'm like, this guy's, he's an all-time great Quake player as far as I'm concerned. Like he's way better than I ever was. And for him to say that to me is just, it's deeply moving. Deeply moving. I think the person is very can get emotional about thinking about that, because at the time, like I said, I really felt I didn't know. I just didn't know. I just knew it was damaging me. I just knew that if I kept going, I could ruin my future. Even if I was successful, I felt I could be flushing my future down the toilet, and that was a very hard thing to accept. The dream was dead. That's what I said. The whole disillusionment happened after that. That's why I was like, no, I'm not going to practice hard. No. Yeah, people are like, yeah, you showed up to a few events. Let me break down the few events I showed up for everybody. It was a year after Babbage's, right? WCG. I had to be convinced to go. As you know, in my writing, I express regret. And for those who don't know, I do regret going to Korea. And the reasons are because, like I stated, my heart wasn't in it anymore. I know I took that position from somebody who would have probably worked harder, who would have really, really valued the opportunity. I embarrassed, I disrespected the competition. I disrespected my teammates. I wasn't a good teammate to Socrates and 04. I could have helped them prepare better, even though, yeah, I helped them prepare a little bit, but I wasn't there. And I disrespected myself for not respecting the competition. So I don't look back on that memory without regret. I viewed it, at the time, it's like, yeah, I'm going to get a trip to Korea and hang out with John, support him on his run, whatever. That wasn't a valid reason to go. Like I said, part of it was peer pressure. The K9 guys were like, hey, you're still good. You should go down there and play.
Right.
I knew it. I knew my heart wasn't with it. I shouldn't have done it. And then there was QuakeCon the following year. That was a nostalgia trip, for those who don't know. I was already working in a restaurant. I had some friends there. My brother was working with me. I was telling him about the pro gaming thing, because right back then it was new, right? It was like totally new. It was like, hey, you want to go see an event? I was like, we can go out to Texas together, have some fun, have some drinks, some laughs, and I'll compete just to show you what it's like. And I finished in the 8th to 12th, bracket with. And then the last one would be the WCG 2002. Again, showing people I qualified. Yeah, I won the West Coast qualifier, regional qualifier. I went to New York, and the blade wasn't as sharp anymore. I wasn't the same guy anymore. And even then, think about it. I was already disillusioned. I need to point this out. So they do this final in New York, right? The land to see who's going to go to Korea. So I get 04 gets put in my group bracket, group. Great. I got the defending champion in my cool. So then after I don't make it to after the group stage. Fine, I'm eliminated. Then the tournament organizers come back and say, "Oh, we messed up. 04 wasn't even supposed to be playing because he's the defending champion."
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, you just fucked up the entire fucking thing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, dude, that really messes things up. Like, you know what I mean? And so they're like, oh, Makaveli, okay, well, you were on the bubble, and this one directly influenced me because I played him. And they're like, well, here, just play Fatality and a best of one to see who. I'm like, really? I've been sitting here 3 hours cold, thinking I was eliminated, and now you just want me to just warm it up, just dump in against Fatality, huh? Like, dude, you know what? I was completely. I was like, fuck this. Like, you guys aren't respecting the competitors. This isn't fucking pro. Don't fucking bullshit me. That's where I was really fucking disillusioned at the time with the scene, because I was like, I'm putting people are putting in all this effort, sacrificing time and resources, and this and that, and then you're gonna fucking jerk us around like this and can't even get your shit straight. Like, no, I was insulted. Like, to the point I spent money to change my own money to change my plane ticket and just fucking leave. Because I was like, I was done. And then after that, you never see me at an event again. Because I was just like, this is not worth my fucking time. It really isn't. And that's how I felt at the time. And it wasn't that I didn't believe in the industry. I did. I just felt at that time, the infrastructure, what I envisioned, just it didn't exist. It didn't exist. And I think it's kind of funny because I know there's some people like, oh, why did you just grind through? Or like, dude, anybody who thinks that, you got a lot of fucking nerve. Let me tell you. I gave fucking everything to the scene. I had nothing fucking left. I was broke. I was living at fucking home. I had fucking no education. I had nothing to fall back on. For anybody to argue that I should have kept grinding is fucking lunacy. Lunacy. I had a very sober self-examination, and I realized, like I said, even in success, I could be damaging my future. And it was a very conscious decision. I remember it was agonizing. I remember discussing with my friend. It was like a 3-hour conversation. We were discussing like the pros, the cons. People just said I was the face, dude. It wasn't like I was just playing, dude. I was getting media attention, national media. Intel, we haven't touched on it. Intel had me do the Pentium 4 testimonial. The full year before they signed with the CPL. These are things I haven't really broadcast, and I think it's kind of lost. The timeline of my media stuff and then the CPL signing with Intel is interesting, to say the least.
I've got a couple of things for you. So one is on the whole topic of like, if people think of the Babbage's one where you see you didn't have the practice PC and it was days without playing Quake. This one you see here where you went to this World Cyber Games and they're like, oh, sorry, we messed up. Hey, just jump straight into a server with Fatality. By the way, Mega Grinder Pros waiting like waiting to play you basically. If people don't get it, think about what you said earlier. You weren't a player that was just like walk in the server and just play off natural talent. You were someone who practiced, prepared, etc. So if people don't know, back then, the joke is in the modern day, Makaveli, first of all, every tournament in esports has practice PCs. People even have PCs in the modern day in their rooms, by the way, etc. They have like a room separately they can play. Then you have the one backstage you play on before you play on. So everyone's warm, by the way. And I can tell you right now, here's another thing that didn't exist. There was no social media. So in the modern day, if some top Counter-Strike or League of Legends pro didn't get those conditions, bro, they would just be straight on social media. And in the modern day, athletes have the megaphone. They have the voice. If you kick up a stink, you can also get things changed. Back then, like you were saying, people only found out the Babbage's story after the events. Like people didn't even know what was happening to you. They just saw you play the game. They probably thought, oh, it's not good anymore. And then they made up their own story. No one had any information. You had no voice to do anything about it, right?
Correct. And I gotta say, I have seen some. I like looking at these setups, these pro.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh man, if any young pros players happen to be seeing this interview, man, guys, you guys got it good. I love those setups, man. Oh man, what a dream. What a dream. Honestly, that's one of the things I miss about the scene the most is like the practice, the camaraderie with the guys, the grind. I miss so much. But going back to what your question is there was no outlet. In fact, I remember I had to find, there's actually an old ESR post. Dude, I found some posts I made from like 2003. I was still hair on fire, like fucking pissed, obviously. And I was going at the CPL and like, it's like, I guess I reached out to Angel via email. Like I probably expressed like, dude, you really fucked me with this, man. You put me on CNN and, here I'm supposed to be your guy. And like, dude, I couldn't even get a practice machine. I couldn't get any fucking help, like nothing. Like, I know you don't want to seem like you're playing favorites, but come on, dude. Can we be fucking real for a minute? Like, dude, like, it was very frustrating. I got some bullshit fucking response about what he had to, even in hindsight, now as a middle-aged man with more business experience, man, fuck that answer, dude. That was some bullshit that he gave me. Bunch of bullshit about, how much money the machines cost. Dude, fuck off, dude. I'm not going to blame him for anything, but the answer he gave me was complete fucking bullshit. Those companies aren't losing jack on those machines. They're all getting boxed up, shipped back, and they're fucking reselling them anyway. Yes. Get the hell out of here with the money. He gave me the dollar amount like that fucking meant something. I was so fucking pissed, dude. I was like, dude, there's other little things that people don't know about Angel. Let me break something up to you. He gave faith, and this is what I found out 20 plus years after the fact from Fatality. He was actually critical of Fatality for playing with other organizational events.
Okay.
And then, because they weren't CP, the WCG was started, right? And the Battletop thing, and there were other orgs kind of trying to poke around. and Fatality told me, he's like, oh yeah, he was like, well, Makaveli's being a team player and this team player, motherfucker. I didn't even have money to get to these fucking events, dude. You fucking kidding me? Like, I look back, and this is all hindsight. I look back at there were events I didn't go to because I had to pick and choose. I didn't have the fucking money to get there. I couldn't. I had to choose the big ones, so I couldn't play in everything. And for him to be like, oh, I was being a team player, that ain't what it was, dude. I didn't have any infrastructure to help me. And nobody was fucking helping me. There was nothing. And yeah, so yeah, he kind of gave this guilt trip on Fatality, and he told me, I was like, dude, and I was telling Jonathan, I was like, bro, I would have played, I would have gone to WCG, like I would have went to CPL Cologne, like, dude, you're right, Fatality went to CPL Cologne. Why wasn't nobody ever asked the question back there? Why isn't Makaveli at that event?
No, sure.
Why isn't he at this other event? Why isn't he? Because I didn't have the freaking money, and I had nobody backing me. At least Jonathan had Razer at the time. He had some help, something. I would have taken a $500 a month salary and just helped me get to events. Like, dude, that would have been life-changing for me. Just anything that I could show my parents that, hey, look, this is tangible. There's something real here coming in. Like, yeah, it just wasn't happening, dude. It just wasn't happening.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say. When you say that even if you'd succeeded, it could have ruined your career and your life, I can also corroborate that, mate. The joke is, I would challenge anyone listening to this interview now who's an old school fan, maybe they know Quake, a bit of Counter-Strike and stuff. Think off the top of your head of the biggest names from the early days, the early 2000s, and tell me how many of them ever even played for 5 years. You can have a very short list, by the way, because even the champions, Makaveli, won, even if you win these tournaments, like you say, Fatality also had like a little, I believe he had like a small salary as well as they covered the comp to the event, etc. People forget this. If you have no salary, if you're only going off prize money, first of all, you basically better be first place. If you even have a one bad map and you come fourth, you're going to get like $5,000 for half a year, so you're going to be fucked, yeah. And then secondly, because of this aspect as well, it means even if you're winning and you do it for a couple of years, like some of the Olympics, this is why Fatality, by the way, is the unicorn. He's the one who got through this and then got the bigger sponsorships and the creative stuff. And that's why, again, I'll never let anyone say a bad word about this guy. He actually he walked the tightrope, mate, and he didn't fall where everyone else fell. Like, I can tell you, mate, there's a lot of really great early Counter-Strike players. You probably know most of them and played with them, who are like the North Americans, etc. And they won CPLs, mate. They used to go to CPLs and come top 3 every time. And all of them quit within 5 or 6 years. And their whole reason why was, well, one, I'm now like 25. I'm not 18 anymore. And then two, it's like, I'm going to have to actually go and get a real job eventually. And at the time, even in games like Counter-Strike, which is the big game, no one knew CSGO would exist years later with millions of dollars and giants. So at the time, they thought, mate, can I really imagine how hard it's going to be number one for another 10 years? And what will I just be making, like 25k a year? Like, again, I could take a job at Walmart and get that. Like, they're not being rude, but like, they essentially, like you say, the dream can only keep you going for so long. There has to be a reality to it as well. Oh, wait there a second. I think you lagged. Wait, I think you lagged a second. You all right? Your camera's frozen. Oh, there you go. It just lagged a second. I didn't hear what the answer was. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so that was actually a real life gut punch when I quit and I got a job in the restaurant. It's a nice restaurant, 5-star white tablecloth, but I was bussing tables. I had way more cash in my pocket than I ever had. Yeah, right? I was one of the top gamers in the world, media, this and that. Fucking broke, dude. Couldn't do shit with myself. Now I'm bussing tables. I'm a nobody. Could go out on the town. I got friends. Could spend a little bit of money. I'm like, dude, like I was killing myself. Like, I guess I didn't realize at the time what I was sacrificing. And I think, now as a middle-aged man, I look back and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I bled for this scene. I sacrificed part of my youth for it. And I think I would hope that I could caution young players today in a not in a negative, bitter way. I don't want people to feel like esports isn't worth pursuing, because it is. It's a great industry. But it does have its pitfalls. It can trap you, and you just need to be cognizant of the dangers that the industry has. Just be careful with your own future and be honest with yourself about, what your potential in esports is. because your future is more important. There's more to life than, like, I'll just say it point blank. The fame and the lights is bullshit, folks. It's bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean fucking nothing. That's part of the reason why I quit. Is when I started thinking back, it's like, well, what am I playing for? If I can't get long-term stability, right? If this doesn't go somewhere, like, so Makaveli, the great player, if I can't turn that into some kind of stability in my life, then what fucking good is it? It's worthless. It's vanity. It doesn't mean anything. And fame is fleeting. It will disappear. No matter how famous you think you are. Fame is like a flame. You got to constantly feed it, right? And if you don't, you become irrelevant. You fade to history. And that's why I don't think people should ever chase fame. I don't think it's a good pursuit. And that was part of the reason why I quit, is because I said my focus was on it being pro. Like even a little bit like the influencer like market today with esports. That wasn't really my bag, man. I'm a competitor guy. I was the competitor. That's, to me, is the heart and soul of esports, is the competitions. I wasn't into, I don't know how some of these people do it, man. They're just on all the time selling stuff. I couldn't do that.
By the way, in your archive, one of the actual testimonials, even though it's one of the ones where it's not somebody who directly was playing with you, from Rafa, the many, many times Quake champion, I thought one of the coolest points he made there was, actually, one of the mega influential things you did was where you did that CNN media piece, where basically, this was the era when, by the way, people weren't wrong. We were all nerds of bad hygiene and fucking monitor glare and just playing all night long. But the difference is, you fucking cleaned up well, mate, and you actually, here's the thing, you spoke in an eloquent way where you actually were able to engage with the hosts on like a business level, showing you had some acumen. You actually showed that we aren't just like the World of Warcraft meme from StarCraft of like the nerd in the basement. Like, this is going to go somewhere one day and we will have professionals. You kind of gave that sheen, right?
Yes, and now in hindsight, this is kind of part of the reason why I'm trying to correct the record a little bit here. That interview, freaking buried, not even talked about.
Right?
Like, are you kidding? Like, I was. Now looking back, man, talk about prophecy. I was a damn prophet in that interview. Yeah. I don't know, man. I should have bought some lottery numbers or something that night, man, because I was on it. So for those who don't know, there's a few things I say in that interview, which I think are important to point out. One, I mentioned the preparation of esports. I talked about the esports athlete mindset, which was not a thing back then. People need to understand.
Yes.
So for me to say that I strive to be the best, just like anybody else in any other sport, was profound at that time. I was comparing what we were doing to traditional sports. Crazy at the time. The other thing I brought up was cross-platform gaming in the year 2000. Linking the markets.
Yeah, you said people's consoles will blow up. That wasn't a thing back then, I can tell you. No.
That didn't happen until over a decade later, folks. Okay. And then the other thing I mentioned was he tried to trap me.
Yes.
With this question. He tried, and the question was basically that I was being used by the chip companies, right? As an adjunct to the chip companies, namely Intel at this time. And my response was basically that who better to tell consumers what's best in the market than a gamer, right? We're the ones pushing these PCs to their limits. We're the ones who want every frame, right? We're the ones pushing the performance side of PC hardware, and I felt we were uniquely positioned.
Yeah.
I felt at the time, if Michael Jordan can sell Nike shoes, why can't I sell video cards? And sure, right, that today, that's all duh. Sure, yeah, duh. Yeah, but but back then, you're crazy, kid. You crazy kid.
Yes.
It just wasn't. Yeah, people thought I was nuts, and that was my dream. I truly believed in the esport athlete. I think we were the athlete for the new generation, the new age. It was right, and I had that vision. I can say that truthfully.
No, by the way, first of all, I do remember that where he tried to I even was using all like fancy vernacular, you're an adjunct of the chip companies. Yeah, he was, listen, that guy knew what he was doing. Like, you could tell he just wanted to make it look like, just fucking the nerds, aren't they, playing the games, what they doing? But you're right, when you say that point, that's even something that'll be lost on the new generation. Because in the modern day, if you have a shit hot PC, all the games are tailored to esports now anyway. You don't have to have some crazy config and all that stuff. Back in the day when we had to buy our own PCs and they were really expensive, it's true, Makaveli, like the joke is, I don't even know what the modern games, but I could still tell you all the fucking NVIDIA settings to put on and how you put the fucking pixelation on the background and what lights and gamma settings. Everyone used to know back then. The joke was we were all overclocking our fucking chips and stuff. Like, you're right, gamers were the ones who basically like took every machine and redlined the shit out of it and were like, I want to get that extra frame because that actually might help me in this online game win the fucking game. Like, that was a real thing back then. Yeah, that wasn't some like nonsense idea. And so you're right, it was actually the other way around. You trapped him because you did the Uno reverse card. It's like the other way around, mate. Actually, I'll give an analogy. I heard when he used to play basketball that Kobe Bryant would go to the arena and he'd shoot a bunch of shots and he'd sometimes tell the people in the arena, like an away arena, like actually the rim's like a half an inch too high up, actually. You've got that a bit off because he practiced so much. He knew that like, oh, like, this isn't right. Like if I shoot my shot, I don't miss like that. And they would go and be like, he's fucking just misses and he's just got a bad attitude. They'd measure and they'd go, shit, he's right. And it's like, mate, he's telling the people who set up the arena that they had it wrong. So I think it's the same analogy. Like, you're right. Like back then, gamers were actually, they weren't just like people playing for fun. They were on the edge of the fucking cutting edge of what we were doing.
Yeah, it was very do-it-yourself back then, right? Like, it's extremely do-it-yourself. 04 and I like to talk about the old days sometimes, too. We reminisce about, it was very do-it-yourself. You had to have a little PC knowledge, right? A lot of us are building our own stuff. Like you said, overclocking it, going into the BIOS, like, possibly, who knows? I'm sure many gamers can comment about times they messed up and had to format
of course.
Because they went to edit something and just totally messed it up to the point it's not recoverable. Well, I guess I'm formatting my rig today. That was the thing. I'm guilty. I've definitely done that. That was the thing. It was a magical time, honestly. It'll never be like that again, frankly. So I look back at that with very fond memories because, it was like, it was the digital frontier, right? It was all new. We were at the cutting edge at that time.
Also, by the way, another testimony that I didn't know myself. Here's one thing. I usually pride myself, one, because I have a very good memory, but two, I also just love Quake and esports and stuff. I'm pretty good at remembering any story anyone tells me. Like, by the way, spoiler, if anyone's ever at an after party, don't do that thing where you tell me idly a story. Like, my brain just records all that shit, and then years later, when it's safe, it'll come out, mate. That's how it works. So I knew a lot of the stories. Like, you notice in that interview, I know a lot of, like, angles. Same with Immortal. I think he was kind of shocked when I interviewed him. I know the stories, mate. I know the ones of what people used to say about, did this person alias or did this person actually like fucking throw a game or something. I know what the drama was back then, but one I'd never heard because Fatality just told it in this document, he'd never actually said this before, is people will know, maybe, like Fatality became famous when he won Razer CPL and all that. No. Early on, in the beginning of Quake 3, he went with you to that Xsreality Invitational thing in Europe, which was technically just an exhibition tournament. It wasn't like some big prize money event. And that was where he actually like announced himself to the world as like the best player. And what the cool thing is, he actually says in this archive that part of like essentially like the vision to do that was inspired by seeing you go and do the Shub tournament thing before. The idea like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, if you're a top NA player, you don't have to just be the best in America. You could go to Europe and battle these guys. That in itself, again, this is like being a pioneer, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the sad things about being erased is at one time I was the bar people measured themselves against, and it was a big deal for him to beat me, and I trained, I had some training gaps because Immortal was kind of falling off, but I trained good for XSI, and he beat me in some good matches.
And you were the only person giving him a game, bro. He was tooling everyone at this time.
Yeah, he didn't lose, and he didn't lose to anybody. And people need to understand. See, now I didn't know this till after. See, I just talked to him recently about it. He was at LAN with Wombat before the event. That was his training partner,
right,
dude. Like, dude, he had the last. Dude, he was. Of course, he was sharper than what? Dude, I had Immortal who was talented, but dude, he was not in the Quake 3. Like he just wasn't. He wasn't the same guy. Like it just wasn't that high level practice. It wasn't. Not making any excuses. I'm just pointing out the preparation.
No. If people don't know, at the time, Wombat was already a champion. Exactly. He was already playing the Quake test. Yes, exactly.
He was the defending champion.
Yes.
He had won the last tournament. So that's why. It was good prep for him, and and it was just again another sign that Fatality was built differently. And thought about it, in my view, correctly in regards to preparation. And that's why I never, ever want to take anything away from Fatality. I don't want to feel, I hate when people try to diminish his accomplishments. you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, frankly, let me just tell you, as his peer, like, I'm not saying this, I mean, he's my friend, but I always tell people, as his peer, let me tell you, he's extremely deep. He's a generational talent and one of the hardest working gamers I've ever met. And if you don't think preparation matters, I don't know what to tell you. I just don't know what to tell you.
Well, actually, there's another point that you make in the archive is if anyone looks, right, again, like I say, if someone's really reductive and they just look at number of championships, there's not going to be many. But if you look at the placings, though, and how often you're winning and losing, it's very consistent, actually. You're basically like a lock to be top 3 at every LAN you ever attended, pretty much. You would basically only lose to the champions. Along the way, you scored plenty of scalps. And if people had to beat you, they basically had to play their best game. Like, this shows, as you say, because it's not just pure talent in your case, this shows that essentially the output of the system that you had, it worked. It proves it works, right?
Yeah, I was consistent. Quake 2, Quake 3, different formats, single elimination, group stages. I played in Europe. I played in North America. It pretty much didn't matter where you threw me. I would compete. I remember I got a lot of heat in IRC. I mentioned it in the doc. I talked about, like you said, it's true. Back in the day, like, yeah, you're ducking people till they were talking because I'd stopped, right? And I was watching the Q3 test because I really didn't. The test was kind of
Yeah, it was a bit iffy.
Working out details. Yeah, working out details. I was still trying to learn the game. So anyway, I remember talking IRC, Makaveli's ducking, right? Because all the Quake 1 guys had come back, and now it's like, Quake 2 is kind of a bit of a black sheep, right? Like, they're not real Quake players kind of thing. So I just made the comment flippantly in IRC that, hey, anytime I've shown up to a LAN, I've been on the podium. So you might as well just reserve me a spot. Again, flamage, man. Oh, just throw some gasoline on a fire and just walk away, man. Because it was bad. But I was grinding. See, that's what they don't know. I talked, but I was grinding. And I truly believe that because, it was true. Every tournament I showed up to, I placed top 3. If I lost to somebody, tournament winner. And then even then, some of the ones I lost, I lost a single map. By the modern standards, like, so if somebody's like, oh, Makaveli took 3rd at Extreme Annihilation, right? On paper. It's like, well, I lost one map to my training partner, Immortal. That's it. I didn't even have a chance to come back. There wasn't even a bracket route for me to come back and challenge. Like, 3rd was max. That's all I could do. I couldn't even get to play Ricks to go get a grand final. None of that. And I love Dan. Dan's a great guy, but sorry, Dan, I would have crushed you. At that time, I would have crushed you. Like, me and Kurt were on another level at that time, like, straight up. And I can illustrate that, but I beat Shub months after that. So, yeah, the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
By the way, I have a couple also of like fun questions from the old days I want to ask you about. So I want to ask you where you come down on this. And this is actually a tricky question to ask because I'm sort of putting you in a tough spot here. Because on the one hand, as you said, one thing I've actually always enjoyed about Thresh's persona as an esports competitor is he did actually create that crazy mystique about himself where that almost made people psychologically thrown off by him, no one really knew when was he practicing and did I actually beat him in practice or was that someone fakenicking? Or was that his other alias and people were trying to keep track of it all, etc. And famously, one thing I also love, by the way, is he maintains that persona to this day if you ask him about esports. Like, he'll never admit if he did that. So Immortal, you know what Immortal's like. He's just a straight shooter. He'll just tell you what he thinks. He is convinced that Thresh did do that fake nick in that like PGL qualifier, and that like it was him. But then they told him, drop out before the finals if you don't go there. But you can beat everyone up to. Obviously, if I ask Thresh, he's going to go, no, that's that wasn't me. I wasn't playing. What would you say about that, Makaveli?
What's funny is I actually cut that from the document. I thought about writing it.
Okay.
The flesh. This is the Tale of the Flesh one.
Okay.
And I cut it because the document it's already long, And I was like, okay, well, I'll save this. I'll save this story, and since you brought it up, I guess this is a good time to tell it. So, caveat: yes. As far as me and Kurt are concerned, Immortal. 100%. That was Thresh. We know. However, Dennis is a smart individual, and he does technically have plausible deniability here. So let me explain why. So, granted, we think it's him based on just style of play, movement. There's certain things you can't hide. Um, and so that being said, here's the trick. So I was going through my memory banks and I was like, PGL season 2, I was there, and I was like, wait a minute, Immortal was there too. That's strange. I didn't pay, I didn't buy his ticket. Why would his parents didn't buy his? Who paid for his plane ticket? Oh, the PGL did. Well, that's strange. I was like, well, maybe they felt a little guilty for what happened because to be fair, if he was actually at that LAN final, he probably wins handily.
Right.
Handily. And so I think maybe there's a little guilt that, hey, let's give this 14-year-old kid his trip to E3, and it's kind of like a make-up thing, right? But here's the deniability part, and this is where I'm going to give Thresh his out. We've known each other since we were teenagers, so Immortal was always viewed as like a little brother to all of us. So for him to fly him out to be with me and him hang out, it's not completely out of bounds. Like as so that's the little technicality I'll add in there, that maybe he has some plausible deniability, saying, no, we flew Kurt out because, well, he's Kurt. He's always been little bro. He was part of the scene. He's one of the top guys. So we just wanted, we're fostering that pro community environment. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. That works. But reality, nah, man, that was him. That was him.
Also, by the way, another thing he did that was clever is because this guy's tactical, his angle, well, you have to have an alibi if it wasn't you. So his is where it was just B2. Well, B2 was a very good player too. That's even a clever angle to do. So another West Coast guy who would have a similar ping. That's even quite a good story. If you're going to put someone else forward as the fall guy, it's a pretty good angle. And it's his boy. He's just going to say this, isn't it? It's a good angle. You know all these guys.
Yeah. Pat will never blow the whistle, man. That's taking it to the grave. It's how it was back in the day, man. We're all, it was a tight-knit community. Yeah. I would hope. I hope one of the things I tried to stress in my document, as I tried to talk about the whole, not just. Yeah, I talked about what I did in my experiences, but I mentioned a lot of other people too, and I think the current narrative of esports history is very simple and not accurate. I think it was far more nuanced and collaborative than people are giving it credit for. And I guess my hope with this document is that it doesn't just force people to ask questions about me. I would hope they ask questions. Who else have they forgotten? Who else are they not noticing? Because I guarantee you there's people there that I think were impactful in this a very important period of esports. I don't think people are understanding that this is a foundational period of esports where somebody could really have messed things up.
Oh, for sure.
Like I don't think people understand like the pressure. Like, yeah, there's more lights. The lights are big now, but back then the lights were focused. They were all on you. Whatever little lights there were, all on you, man. Like if I went in that CNN FN interview, for example, and I just freaking blew it, stumbled, made an ass of myself, looked like the typical, nerdy gamer who can't articulate, and that could have been damaging for the scene, damaging for sponsors, and pulling in attention. Same thing when I went down. People don't know the Pentium 4 thing. I was down at the Intel corporate office signing an NDA, meeting with these people. Like, I had to put forward a good professional face so they would trust me with this hardware that they'd never. This wasn't a thing they did with gamers back then. It just. It was considered. I'm pretty sure I was a test case for Intel. I'm almost confident I was the proof of concept.
But also, when you say this could have been fucked up, if some guy went in there with a stupid attitude or they didn't seem serious, you think this would have potentially changed sponsorships and things in esports?
It could have. I don't know for sure, but it surely wouldn't have helped. I was very cognizant of what the stakes were. I wasn't in it just, I hate to sound like stupidly humble, but I wasn't in it for myself. I really felt I wanted to grow the scene. Like, my goal, and I've expressed this, I had limited runway. I knew it. I knew in my heart that I had limited runway to do the pro gaming thing. But I wanted to do it because I knew in my heart that we were starting something special. That was my belief. I wanted to be a part of starting something, because not very, how many people can say that they were there at ground zero
Sure.
and help start an industry or help create a sport. And I believed it. I believed it could be there. So yeah, I just pushed for that, man. I really did.
I've got a couple of questions. These are some stories that I noticed were also retold in the archives. So I'll ask you now to essentially retell one for me now. One of my favourite stories is one that wasn't known. No one actually knew this on Xsreality and the sites back then. People might have seen the game, but they might not have known. As you say, Wombat was one of the first champions when it was Q3 test. And I remember this detail, right? Because actually, the game that you reference, he played a game against a Swedish player called Zenon, who was a really great Quake world player. And I can tell you, I actually knew this guy in Counter-Strike when he was a professional years later. And he was a really good player. Yeah, he was a very talented player. And he actually told me about this match, by the way, because he told me it was the most bullshit match ever. What happened is when they played on Tony 2, the map everyone knows with the teleporters and the sort of gothic cathedral style, what happened was famously, Wombat in the early days actually played, and this was the ultimate example of this, he played just basically Counter-Strike style. Like, he never actually went for like big fights. What he did is he just waited at the teleporter, and then if you came through, he would just instantly try and go back through the teleporter after doing damage. And he would just basically play cat and mouse the whole time. And this game against Zenon, if people know, I think it was like a 30-minute game or something mental, bro. It just kept going forever because essentially it was going to be whoever got one kill won the game. And the cool thing is, he did this, right? And then he went over to Xsreality, like you say, this invitational tournament, and you played him, and you played him on that map, and then you tell the story from here. What did you do? It's a pretty cool story. It's kind of like a fucking ultimate revenge story, right? Give me the story.
All right, so I saw the match, and I want to put it into context of framing because of where my mindset was at the time. Again, I was and am a true believer. Okay, I was trying to grow the scene, which didn't exist at that time. So in my view, I was taking a step back, learning Quake 3, and I see this event. Great, grand final, Xenon versus Wombat. Cool, and I'm watching 1-0 stinkfest. What the dude, we're trying to create a sport here. Bro, that is not it. I was furious. I was so furious for a tournament I didn't even compete in. I didn't lose. I didn't even play him. Just seeing the match just created a visceral reaction internally. I was like, that's fucking bullshit. And I agree with Xenon. I would have been furious if I was him. Just absolutely furious. You didn't even fucking play me. Like, that's how I'd be. Like, what the fuck, dude? So anyway, I drew him at XSI. We had Tourney 2. And I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to teach this guy a lesson. I'm going to fucking slow play the shit out of him. And that's what I did. I gave myself a little room for error. I was 2-0, and then I just fucking ran. And straight up just ran, didn't engage. Fuck you. I'm going to do some chip damage, get the fuck this, ran away the whole freaking time. Just slow played him really bad. And then, he got one, I think, in the final minute. Good thing. Hey, I knew he was a good player, so you're all right. Good thing. It's a little room for error. And so I beat him 2-1. And I swear this is a true story, folks. I'm not lying to you. I went up to him after the game and I asked him specifically if what I did to him was lame. And he said it was. And I said, don't ever fucking do that in a grand final again. Fucking bullshit. We need butts in the seats, dude. That was not fucking it. Not fucking it. Like, somebody wants to slow play now, millions of fucking dollars. Hey, great.
Sure.
Okay, you got a bunch of big money, big lights on the line. Great. It's established. Great.
Yes.
People understand what you do. But back then, dude, we're trying to get sponsors. We're trying to generate buzz.
Yes.
Like, lose with some class, dude. Don't freaking I got an extra $5,000 and I'm gonna fuck over the industry in the process because I slow played it and made the whole fucking thing look stupid. Like, really? Like, no, dude. Like, there was a bigger mission involved. So yeah, I took that as a personal quest to teach him my lesson, and I did.
And then another story. This one, by the way, is prime Makaveli story. This one, 'cause it's a Quake 2 story. Is I remember even the setup of this because I used to follow all the early esports stuff. What happened was people might know one detail of this that sets up the story, which is that famously Thresh came over to the UK and they had a Quake tournament there, right? That was what they'd done is they'd had a bunch of online servers for free for all, and then whoever won this massive free for all, like Giga tournament, basically got to come down to London, and it was held in the Ministry of Sound, by the way, which was like a baller nightclub that I think even exists to this day. And what they did was they had the winner of the free-for-all tournament play Thresh in a 1v1, and famously, it was a guy called Billox. Now, the problem here, by the way, is, like I said earlier, it was a free-for-all play. It wasn't a dueler, it wasn't his style. And he's playing Thresh, and if you know Thresh's whole style is going to be like, right, look, mate, we're not even going to play Quake. I'm basically just going to beat you like a chess player. I'm going to tool you. But what's funny is, the story goes, as part of the warm-up, you played this guy, right? And you almost wanted to make this point to this guy of like, look, we're sort of like playing like pros, mate. We're trying to play another level. So the story goes that you beat him on Q2DM1. This demo exists, by the way, with just hand grenades. Not even a grenade launcher. Just, is this true? Is this the story? What, have I got detail wrong?
You're a little off.
Okay.
There is a hand grenade story, but the guy I played was Knight.
Oh, maybe I got it wrong then. Fair enough.
Yeah, you're a little off. Billix, you got the two guys mixed up, but Billix there was that demo of him. But Knight was another guy. He won this free.
Oh, did you do this twice?
No, it was this the one.
Oh, okay.
And so Knight is the guy you're thinking of.
Right.
And he won some event in Europe, and they flew him to the PGL Season 3 finals.
Ah, right. Okay, I've mixed it up. Okay. Go on, hit me with it.
Right. And so there, I was in Thresh's bracket that year, but people knew who was good, so they gave me an exhibition match against this guy, right? And I was like, this poor guy didn't know what he was dealing with. And then I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I wasn't in the finals, and I knew I could beat people there that were at the LAN finals. So it was kind of like an awkward, weird position to be in. And so I was like, I'm going to make an example of this guy. And so partially through the match, once I realized like, I can handle this guy, no problem, I started styling on him with hand grenades only.
Which is absurd. Like, it's almost impossible to beat someone like that, right?
Yeah, not anybody good, no. So I was hand grenades only, and I was styling on him a little bit, I was looking to embarrass him a little bit on stage, which in hindsight is that's not good. I shouldn't have tried to do that. And they actually told me to cool it.
Okay.
That's the true story. True story.
You called off the dogs, right?
Admin came by. He's like, Vic, cool it, dude. Like, so the hand grenade stopped. I just played him normal after that. But that's the story. I already knew that. I wanted to make it a spectacle.
Yeah.
Spectacle. The esports is spectacle. And I'm sure any modern fan or players today that are involved will appreciate when I'm saying that. Spectacle. Like it's cinema, right? Isn't that the line? Cinema, yes. Baby. We want cinema. I don't want fucking, robots freaking just staring at their monitor, dude. I want some emotion. I want some drama. I want cinema. Like, so that's what I was trying to deliver.
No, I mean, I think that is a key aspect for people to understand what you were doing as well. Because as you say, I would actually draw the analogy if people know like MMA and the UFC. Oh, there have been some people who just try to cynically point fight and just win off boring fight, but they just want to win on the judges' scorecard. I put it this way, that sort of person, you can even become a champion doing that. You'll never be loved by the fans, though. If you want people to watch the sport, I can tell you what made people watch MMA was amazing fights where people just went out there and gave it their all and just rock 'em, sock 'em robots. Maybe they lost, but the heart was on display. Like you said, the raw entertainment spectacle is what draws someone in. That's what makes someone a fan of the sport, right?
Sure, absolutely. The drama, right? And a little bit, and I tried to play the heel at times, for sure. And I admit now, looking back, I didn't do it necessarily great all the time. I was a young kid. To be fair, I didn't even know what real confidence was, man. It was all a fucking act. Right? True confidence comes from experience and part of pain and loss. Like you have setbacks. It's how you grow, and you really get your confidence that way. I was just some 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, man. And with no real, what I consider real experience, no real life loss I had experienced yet at that time, like no real hard lessons to ground you. So I didn't really understand how to walk that tightrope sometimes between bravado and just being an ass like I'm much better at it now with a little tongue-in-cheek talking and maybe a little self-deprecation in there mixed in. I'm good at walking that line now because I'm a more experienced individual. Back then I was a kid. I was trying to, like I said, I was trying to do this whole Muhammad Ali shtick, the whole Louisville lip thing, trying to be that guy, and sometimes I most likely went over the line, and probably made some people mad or whatnot, but I would just say it was in the context of trying to make the scene grow. It really was. So that's all I can say about that.
Right, one thing I will say towards the end of this interview is this. There is an idea in the future. Look, we won't get into why, but people will understand in the future. The idea is eventually, the hope is we'll make some sort of like a document people can look at and see all the stuff you've archived and see that you've done sort of like a historical piece timelining your career and the things you did and these testimonies and stuff. I would just ask you this, a bit like what we talked about at the beginning. As someone who had those years, you had the memories, you've told a couple of the stories on podcasts and interviews over the years, but to actually go back and sort of dive back into it all and draw these different sources together, what do you think the impact the process had on you has been? Like, is this something, I mean, both for you and then also the idea, hopefully this can be an artifact for the future, right?
It was a little eye-opening, as I told you privately, as for people, I'll express. It brought out some tears, a lot of emotion. This is stuff I buried. I just made peace with it. I don't think people understand the emotional and strength it takes to be in a position I was, where it's like you're on national TV, you're the face of esports, and the next minute you're bussing tables and nobody fucking remembers your name or your impact. And then also to go through carrying 15 years, knowing I wasn't stupid. I knew I had some impact, right? I was fucking there, right? And then to just accept being forgotten. I don't think people understand what it takes to do that. It's not the easiest thing. And so that's why when you interviewed me in 2016, it truly was a surprise. I had made peace with being forgotten. And like I said, just you, it's your fault, man.
Okay.
This is all your fault. And people started saying all these things, and it's almost tragic, honestly. There's kind of a tragedy in my story where, I've went through a long time thinking, what the fuck did it matter? I helped grow start this industry here. I'm buried in the foundation of a cathedral and nobody fucking knows I'm here. And I want to express that when I say this, I don't want fucking fame or money. I don't want a piece of the $1 billion. That's not what, just a thank you and a handshake every once in a while for what I sacrificed and bled for the scene would be nice. Just recognition that I was there would be nice, because I feel like what I've put together here is a missing chapter in esports. There is a looking back now, being more, I feel I was a connective tissue, a cultural tissue, more than, and I think there's a blind spot now looking at esports and the way it's documented. Oh, this champion won this, he's that's that. It's like, well, what about the builders? What about the mentors? What about the ones, who don't have a big trophy case, but their fingerprints are all over the fucking scene? What about those kind of people? How do you recognize them? And I think part of the thing I realized putting this together is that nobody else could have done this. That was also one of the tragic things I realized, is that this entire beginning of esports is very fragmented and undocumented.
Yeah.
And it really made me sad when I was looking at it. I was like, and that's part of this is if I don't say something, forget, I'm 46 this year, I'm pushing 50. There's no guarantees in life, folks. I'm not getting any younger. This information will die with me. And that's what I really thought that. And I was like, well, maybe I should, like I said, fatality prompted me. And I'm like, well, maybe I should put some of this down. And forgive me if I'm gonna keep rambling here. Like even my Shub thing. Like, dude, that's not even fucking talked about. Like it's like a blip. There's like a couple little old web pages that mention in passing. Folks, That's like the first international duel in esports history.
Yes.
Straight up. Like, I represented North America. They called me up. They're like, hey, we want you to represent North America. There were no rankings back then, no that. It was just straight up reputation. I was at the top of the short list, right? Which should tell people something, by the way, right? And then think about what I agreed to. They said, I didn't even know who I was going to play. Like, hey, we're going to have this tournament. We're going to have some finalists over there. Fly out, play whoever wins. Great. And then the personal stakes, this is historic as far as I consider myself one of the first 1v1 world champions ever. Whether people want to say there wasn't an official circuit or whatever, fine, but those didn't exist back then.
Yeah, of course.
But let me put the context. I played this man right after he won. Right after he won. He had just won the LAN final. Wasn't a day later, wasn't even 2 hours later. I played him directly after his greatest fucking achievement on LAN and beat him 3-0, 3 games to 0. Okay, and that's the story there, right? And I trained for. And Dennis can back me up. I used to go to gamers.com office. I had somebody picking me up in the morning, commuting to the office, and I was trained there all freaking day. No pay, no media, no sponsor. The only thing I was playing for was North American pride and to avenge my friends because Death Row got creamed by Clan 9 the year before. That was it. And that's like not even documented in the record, basically. And to be like this, it's just sad. Maybe it's like I said, partially my fault. I haven't done a very good job of promoting myself. I'm not really as shocking as that may be to people who knew me back in the day.
Sure.
That's not me, man. I'm not a clout chaser, man. I don't care. Like the people, even now, it's like if people want to recognize all this that I'm putting down in a document, great. I think it should be recognized? Yes. Do I think I'm a foundational figure of esports? 100%. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And the right people know. Thresh, 04, Rafa, Fatality, right? The people who matter know. So whether other people want to recognize it or not, that's another fact. That's another thing, right? That's out of my control. It would be nice. It would be nice just to have a little recognition, just knowing that, yeah, man, I gave everything to this.
By the way, I think another thing this process also sort of highlights is that bigger point that if you ask someone the history of esports, it's funny because obviously all the naysayers in my career will be like, why do we need an esports historian? Anyone could just look stuff up on a Wikipedia. No, all you can look up on the Wikipedia is the result. You can't know like you say, you can't know the story. You can't know like who was that guy? Who did he have to beat? What was the significance? Crucially, as you say, people only ever get, it's like Sesame Street, mate. They only know the big names. They know Thresh and Fatality. And by the way, the sad thing is in the modern day, a lot of people, Quake people won't even know Thresh maybe. Maybe they only go back to Rafa or 04 or maybe they don't even know Fatality. I mean, it sounds crazy to you or I, mate, but there'll be a day one day where people will be like, Fatality on Mount Rushmore, like, because too much time's passed and this stuff hasn't been archived properly. Like, I mean, we were discussing this on Twitter, mate. The joke is, I'm serious when I say that. Like, we almost need, like, in the same way as there's the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, we almost need that in Quake and esports. We need to have, like, Thresh's first mouse, and we need to have fucking, like, K-Sharp's, whatever, fucking mouse pad or something. We need all this stuff because otherwise it will just fade into the back. But you wouldn't get all the great players and all the amazing shit we have now without those first people, in the same way as you needed the Muhammad Ali's, like you say, and the people playing like in the Green Bay Packers in the 1960s. You need all that stuff. You need it, and you have to document it. It's important, right?
Yeah, and I would argue, like, if you really, to all the modern players or the younger guys, I would just say this: like, how are you supposed to have a sport without any history? Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You need the legacy. You need the legacy angle. Like, it's important for framing things and the new accomplishments, the new blood. It's important to frame things about how things came from the past. And it's also good, just and I mentioned that in my document. Just like with people, man, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget where you came from. Please don't. I see the scene. I see it. The big lights, the money, the attention. People get commercials now. It's accepted now. It's cool now, right? Don't get lost in that. Please don't get lost in that. This was a passion-driven industry. It was driven by a lot of people with do-it-yourself attitudes. Like, a lot of people bled for this. Don't just be like, oh, it's In fact, I would even argue your job's not done. Don't look around at the lights, but oh, we made it. We're pro. Like, no, you have not. There's players, I still see it all the time. Players suffering from burnout, not getting the proper support they need from organizations, this and that. I saw the thing about their organizer. What CEO was on a bender for 2 years, like blowing money. Like, there's problems, guys. There's problems. Try to be a steward of esports. That's all I would encourage you. Try to leave the scene in a better state than when you came into it, right? And because the scene, and I agree, the scene has a horrible memory. I'm actually been getting on them to try to correct this, but I'm gonna point this out publicly right now because I think it's borderline insulting. My Liquipedia entry. This is all it says for me. Victor Makaveli Cuadra is a retired American Quake player. Wow, thanks guys. Thank you. I'm glad I contributed years of my youth, all the media stuff, pushing it, trying to normalize it. Yeah, I'm glad I made all those fucking sacrifices so you can just be like, yeah, just some retired fucking player. Like, dude, oh, it's so frustrating. And now I realize the emotional strength it took just to be quiet all these years because I've known these things. I just didn't feel it was worth documenting. But now I do. I don't want the industry to lose itself. It needs some history. This whole the professionalism. It didn't just manifest in a vacuum. These are techniques that have been passed down since the beginning, and they've been codified, improved upon. Right? People have adapted, and right, you make them better. But I think one of the things, like he kind of touched on Thresh, is like I don't think he gets enough credit.
No,
everybody's like, he just says first pro gamer. Like I was talking to Rambo about this. Yes, guys. Yes, people. That Rambo. And I was telling him about some of the psychological things Dennis used to go over with me as a player. And even Rambo was a little surprised. Like, you guys used to talk about that? I'm like, dude, people don't understand how ahead of his time Thresh was.
For sure.
Like, yeah, I can't say it enough. Like, the stuff he was talking, like, this is commonplace now in first person shooter, like, being the man, right, in pro training. But he was thinking about the stuff back in '96, dude, without any infrastructure, no coaching, no organizations, pure instinct, right? And I think people need to understand that too. Even with my stuff, like that CNN F interview. Do you know how many 21-year-olds could pull that off? I had no clue what those people were. It was a live interview, and I had no clue what they were going to ask me, right? And at the time, I didn't even realize what I did was so great, to be perfectly honest. But now, in hindsight, as a 45-year-old man looking back at my 21-year-old self, that was actually pretty good. I actually got pretty media savvy, apparently, because, man, I could have blown that, man. That could have been bad. So, yeah, I'll just say there's definitely a short list of young people that could have pulled that off. It's just an interesting ride, man, looking back. And like I said, I put this document together. I just feel like I'm finally gonna push for my place a little bit, man. Just a little bit. I think I've allowed silence too much. Just too much.
At the end of this interview, you did quite a good job there, but do you have a final message for people? Do you want to thank anyone or say hello to anyone?
I definitely want to thank Fatality for encouraging me to tell my story. For those who don't know, we were just talking about the old days, and he encouraged me to put something together, so I did. And I started writing, and next thing I know, I got this freaking document, which I'm still kind of curating and what have you. But yeah, I want to thank all the guys, man. Rafa for even creating a space for me. I didn't meet these people until after I came back to the scene. They don't, these are the modern guys. They don't have to make any time for me, man. I don't expect them to. I really don't. And so the fact that they did, and they've said all these things and shown me the reverence and respect that they have, is I just want to thank everybody and all the Quake players for remembering old Mac. And I really appreciate that. And my only request to any of the newer fans of esports who may see this, pros or otherwise, I would just hope that you take a second to reflect and look deeper into esports, how it all started, recognize that it was a grassroots, passion-driven thing. It was a collaborative effort. There's a lot of people. It wasn't just Thresh and Fatality, as great as they were. I think this is getting simplified and understated, and I don't think it gives a good view for the modern players, right? To ground them in the important values of esports, right? And a lot of it is, there's a lot of sacrifice in the past that people, I think, need to look at. That you are, I mean, and I say this. Let me close. I say this without bitterness or envy, but the people today, you're living the dream of the shattered dreams of those in the past, and just keep that in perspective. Because when I see people today, and I said, I'm proud of you. I say it with pride, but you're living my shattered dream. Remember that and hold on to it.
You know, I'm always rep my set, and the people who've got my back are the following people who support my videos: Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Jason, Jensen Go, Tosh, Toucan, and you know, the all-time ride or die, Jerky's Minion, isn't it? Special thanks to him. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to find out who the upcoming interview subjects are? Do you want to take part in one of those long discussions with me where you set the topics? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA? Well, all of those perks and more are available where? At the Patreon link in the description box below. So put your money where your mouth is and join the Xsreality today. You dig?